What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about the review scores for Star Wars Outlaws. It's finally come out, and hey, like it or hate it, at least we've gotten to this point together, right? The game comes out this Friday. Technically, it comes out earlier if you get the higher up editions, and it's sitting right now at a 77 on Metacritic based off of, I believe, 61 reviews. Now, here's the thing. If Eurogamer didn't give the game a 4, and hey, knock yourselves out, give the game whatever scores you want, right? There's a 4 out of 10, and that 4 very much obviously brings it down. I predicted this game would get an 80 to an 82. Without that 4, you're probably looking at like a 79 instead of a 77, so maybe 78 and a half, right? So the game is honestly getting around what we thought. Like, I was a point or two off, right? And I'm normally pretty good at reading these game journalists. You know, the game is getting a lot of 8s. If you scroll through, you can read like the excerpts kind of all of them, right? There are more 8s than there is anything else. You do have 9s. You do have 9.5s. I don't think anybody gave this game a perfect 10 out of 10. And I do think the 9.5s there's only like 1 or 2 of them in the entire thing. So most of them lie. And honestly, 7s is probably the next biggest one, right? 7s, 8s. Kind of what we thought. I mean, this very much looks like a 7 to an 8 out of 10 game. Along with all of these like written ones, I did actually watch Mr. Maddie Plays as well, who very much did not like the game. He doesn't give scores, but it sounds like based off of his time, if he were to give a score, I guarantee you it would be under a 5 out of 10. It very much feels like that to me. So, this feels like a game that if you know what you want out of it and you think you're going to get it, you probably will. It's kind of almost difficult to talk about it, right? I mean, look, there are some things that kind of stood out, right? One thing that very much scares me, and it scares me going into Friday, is you're seeing and you're hearing a lot about stealth. And I'm not opposed to stealth. Like, I like stealth games, and, I think a lot of games don't even do stealth all that well. Like, very few games really push the envelope when it comes to stealth. So I'm not asking to reinvent the wheel. But from what I've seen with, like, the checkpoint system and how you drop guns and just all of this different literal game mechanics, right? You could say, well, Alex, it's their opinions. You could disagree. That's fair, and I've said that, right? Like, you don't have to look at the 77 and say, oh, okay, that's exactly what this game is. You might like it more, you might like it less, right? It's based off of you, more importantly, than it is based off of other people. But when you hear how certain elements of the game actually function, right? Like, there are literal things that were said that are like factual things, and you can kind of gauge, if you like that or not. I am not liking what I'm hearing about stealth. And if you peruse, you look around some of these review scores, as you go down, stealth is mentioned over and over and over again, that this is one of the game's biggest weaknesses is stealth, okay? The story and the characters is actually more times than not looked at as like the game's strength. I would even say some of the gun play, when you're able to do it, that's part of the game's strength. Things like the reputation system, the wanted level, stuff like that seems to be kind of 50-50. You kind of take it or leave it. That's kind of the spread, right? It feels like more of the story, characters, and some of the gameplay is the game's strength. Even I would say maybe the environment and how the world is kind of built. Even I guess, they are going fully in, right, on, okay, they've heard us, they've heard the Ubisoft formula complaints, and they have tried their best, or they're trying maybe on the fly to fix those things. So is it, like a stereotypical Ubisoft game? In some ways it is, in some ways, it isn't, right? Like, they are trying to move away from it, but they kind of fall into, it looks like they fall into issues here and there. Ultimately, for me, it doesn't move the needle. Like, again, I am concerned about the stealth because I hear that it's in the game continuously. I'm not a fan of like the getting caught, being sent back thing, especially when it happens to a lot of people. It happens all of the time. There's all of these built-in checkpoints to the missions. It's almost every mission that you have to do some part of it stealth. Things like that do not, like, I'm not a fan of that whatsoever. So I really hope I can overlook that when I play it, because I'm looking for just an overall fun time, right? And again, like, that's another thing that's kind of come out of it. Like, you see all these 7s, you see all these 8s, and it's like, again, I don't want to get too bogged down into the score, because ultimately, like, I don't care too much about the scores, but, like, it seems like it's a solid time. Like, overwhelmingly, from most of these people, it's a fine game. And then you just have to ask, and this is fine, I totally respect this, I've said this before, you have to ask yourself if you want this fine game or a good game, like a solid game, right? you have to ask yourself, some people are fine with it. And also, I mean, in my opinion, there's nothing really wrong with a 7 or 8 out of 10 type game, right? Now, there are some games that get 7s or 8s that are actually much better, right? There's constantly people posting on Twitter saying, what's a game that got like a 75 that you think is actually better than that? There's examples of those throughout time, but also games that are like quite legitimately a 7 out of 10 game, right? We've talked about this. They're fine. They're good. They do some things pretty okay. They're fun. If maybe this is one of the games where you just kind of turn off your brain and just go out and kind of have fun, right? Explore a bit. Maybe some of the things are too similar to other things, but you just play it and then you don't think about it like a year from now. And again, you kind of have to ask yourself, is that a good thing, or is that something you want to participate in? I understand there's people that say, no, like you want to get great games, or they want to get great games, amazing games. Those are the games that they play. That's fine. I actually understand that. Money's tight. The world is going through some stuff, right? So like if you don't want to pay for like a good experience, you want a great or above, I totally understand that. But also, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with games being just like fine. You know what I mean? I mean, you would like games to be better than fine, but a game here and there. And that's what I've talked about with Star Wars Outlaws. If this game is just fun, if it's just solid, if I can put in 20 or so, which by the way, the lengths are kind of coming out. This is a short game. Like, to do everything, yeah, you might be looking at like 25, 30 hours, but like if you're going through, especially if you want to beat this thing before Astrobot or Casting of Frank Stone or other, these other, or Space Marines 2, right? Some of these early September games, you might be able to beat this thing in like 15 or so hours, which I gotta be real, I am a fan quite a bit, actually. I was wording it maybe the wrong way in the beginning there. I can play 100-hour type games, but I don't need all games to be like that. If this game can succeed at being 15, 20 hours, and I've seen this being said, if this is the lesson Ubisoft is learning, I'm totally cool with that lesson, right? Maybe they need help here and there, and there's still some lessons, to learn as time goes on. But if they're learning that you can make like a 20-hour, decently fun open world game, and like that's okay, totally good. Keep doing that, and hopefully you can actually set an example for other games to do it, because, because oftentimes you get 50 or 60-hour games, and half of it is just fluff. So really, you've had a 25-hour game the whole time, right? Just like something like this. So we'll see. I'm still getting it. I'll get it on Friday, unless Ubisoft wants to hit me up, and we'll go from there. I'll be having my own review and impressions videos as the days go. If you guys want me to talk about any other, kind of element of Star Wars Outlaws, we can totally do that as well. Oh, let me just throw in too, I was talking a bit about, obviously, like the game itself. Bugs was one really big thing that scares me as well. Where are they playing? Like, here's the thing, the game's not, or at least what they were playing, the game's not out yet, right? I think it's out today or tomorrow, whatever it is, right, for the deluxe editions and whatnot. There's got to be a day one patch. And I'm seeing some like bad stuff. See, that's another thing. There's some things that are not actually subjective. They're more objective, right? Like describing how stealth works is like an objective thing. And then you can like it or dislike it, right? That's more subjective. Another thing that's just like plain out facts is the game is not running well. There's bugs, there's crashes, there's AI problems, and this is not surprising, because we've seen like that IGN thing, right? It looked unpolished. A lot of the gameplay we have seen leading into the game looked unpolished. And it seems like it still is unpolished. So that is a huge thing that you've got to look. If the frame rate is up and down here and there, if there's a little issue with a bug here and there, it's a 20-plus hour game. All right, fine. But if it's happening consistently, if the entire product is generally unfinished, this game also went gold like 2 months ago. Like, for the last 2 months, they could only be working on DLC or patching. That's it. That's the only thing they actually could work on in the last 2 months. And the game still doesn't run all that well. So that's something that they've got to figure out, and they got like 3 days to do it. Really, they've had 2 months to do it. But, I mean, now you've ran out of time, and the game is coming out. So hopefully the game runs well, because that really could be like a stake into the heart here. These other issues, they are more subjective for sure. Some people might like them or hate them. If the game starts being reported when like mass players are playing it, right? If the game is going to be reported that, hey, this game's not running well, this game's not performing, that's going to hurt the sales. It really will. That's something people very much, at least in my opinion, from what I see, I feel like people very much pay attention to that stuff. So they definitely got to get that stuff. And you know what? And having a bad score or lower score because of that, I think is totally good, fine/good. You review it how it is in that moment, right? If the game is bug-free, maybe the Metacritic score is like an 82, 83. Maybe it jumps half a point, if not more, right? But the thing is, you're reviewing it as it is. So if the game is like that at launch, it's a 77. If the game is bug-free, maybe it's higher than that. Maybe it's actually, a better game, quote-unquote, right? Like with a score. But you have to review it how it is when they're playing it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.